Hi everyone, my name is Lior and I'm a Senior Cloud Security Architect for Ermetic. Ermetic provides a comprehensive cloud infrastructure security solution, and we view IAM, Identity and Access Management, as really the centerpiece for cloud infrastructure security. In the next few minutes, I'm going to explain exactly why that is and exactly why it's very important to give this topic a lot of attention in your organization and how you can actually leverage it with other type of security technologies in order to really limit the kind of risk that you have in your cloud environments and do more effective governance over identities in your environment. So first of all, before we get into it, let's talk about the main difference between cloud environments and on-prem technologies that we used to have. So in the cloud, a lot of things became, or even everything, became an API call. Even things like hardware configurations, network management, and of course, identity and access management just became API calls that are very easy to control programmatically and also produce very digestible information that can be used in order to much easily control the environment. Now, another thing that happened is that the virtual wall that there used to be between the R&D and IT departments, where the R&D would develop code and then throw it over that wall, and the IT would manage it in production, that wall is also almost completely gone because everyone has their access to the relevant environments where they can actually modify and affect things even in production. Now, these two changes present a lot of opportunities and a lot of threats in managing the security of those cloud infrastructures. So when it comes to opportunities, configurations and logs are very, very easily accessible. And as we mentioned before, they can be very easily programmatically parsable, which allows us to have the kind of control that we always dreamed of in those environments, if we actually know what it is that we're doing and producing the right kind of information from our systems. Now, when it comes to threats, almost everyone, as we mentioned before, have their hands in the cookie jar, right? This really complicates things and makes things very, very hard to manage, both technically and politically in the organization. Now, environments also change very, very fast because cloud supports a lot of things and business functions know what it is that they can do. They demand them to produce these kinds of services. And of course, business usually wins, right? Now, also the elasticity that we have in these kinds of configurations makes things very, very susceptible to change. Configuring things easily can also mean configuring things in the wrong way easily. And that, when it comes to information security, can create a lot of problems. And this is especially true for identity and access management, because if you think about it, the layer of identity and access management in cloud infrastructure actually now made everything, the access paradigm for everything, standardized for each cloud security provider, right? They usually have this one service that is not usually very easy to control and to master. And that one service controls the access to all of your resources. And as we mentioned before, it's very easy and also very tempting to get this wrong, because the most tempting thing that a practitioner in the cloud can do is just say, I want things to work, so I'm going to give the permissions as wide as I possibly can. And it's very easy to do so in the cloud, because if you just put a star in the wrong place, you might actually bring down the entire environment by exposing the wrong kind of access to the wrong entity. Now, this is very, very crucial, both to the blast radius that you can have from potential breaches. Imagine that you have identities that are breached that have a lot of permissions that they don't really need, what that would mean to your environment and what that would mean to the data in your environment, and also to the attack surface of how vulnerable your environment really is. Now, this means that the biggest unsolved problem today, right? This was deduced a few years ago. The biggest unsolved problem in cloud infrastructure security is identity and access, right? It's a very, very complex thing that has huge, huge potential to create damage if you manage it in the wrong way. For this reason, Gartner has introduced a category called CIEM, Cloud Infrastructure Entitlements Management, that really just means giving the right kind of permissions to the right identities, right? Achieving what is called least privilege, right? So each identity, both human and service accounts, right? Identities used by workloads, for example, have just the permissions that they need in order to perform their job functions. So if they do mistakes, the fallout is less. If they're breached, the fallout is very, very minimal. And the reason for that is that they predicted that 75% of cloud infrastructure security failures will result from mismanagement of IAM. And guess what? Management of IAM is on the customer side in the shared responsibility model, right? So our philosophy is to combine this new challenge, right, the KIM challenge, with the more mature category called Cloud Security Posture Management, or CSPM, into one unified platform. The way our product works is we integrate with the environment in a very, very easy way, right? We don't have an agent. You have the SaaS platform that in a few minutes can integrate with the environment. We consume configurations and identity permissions and all the information relevant to solving these problems. We digest it, we analyze it, and also review logs to see the behavior that identities actually perform in the environment. And that way, we are able to deduce two things. What is the least privilege that every identity needs to have, and what are the potential security issues for that identity? This way, we can actually perform analytics that allow us to understand exactly where there could be the most severe issues. Because it's not just where you have security problems, right? This is where identity and access management becomes so important. Security problems are much, much more significant when they correlate with an identity and access management issue that can make the breach a lot worse if the permissions it's then exposed to are that much wider. So we give you this kind of analytics that allow you to see where you have the most sensitive security issues that also correlate with overprivileged and sensitive permissions within your environment, which of course is very, very hard to manage. Now, we produce all this with very, very easily to understand visualizations, which are very, very hard to produce, but they are very, very effective once they are created, right? And they're very, very hard to produce otherwise. Now, we also provide you with simple to use prevention solutions, right? So for example, if we find that a certain identity has a policy to it that provides it with extremely privileged permissions that are very, very wide, as we mentioned before, a star in the wrong place, as we see here on the left, can produce very, very wide and very powerful permissions. So here, for example, this policy provides full access to all S3 buckets in AWS. We can actually replace it with a right-side policy that is based on the behavior analysis of the identity. We see what it actually accesses and what it uses, and then we are able to provide you with the right-size policy that you can then replace with one click of a button. Now, all of this is actually contextualized into compliance and best practice standards, so you understand where you might have gaps in adhering to those standards and how you can easily solve it. Now, since we also analyze logs, we also give you the ability to detect anomalous behavior in your environment, so you can find attackers along the cyber kill chain before they can actually deploy their payload, hopefully. And finally, we also give you the ability to provision permissions just in time. So if you have very sensitive permissions, they can be granted to personnel within your environment just when they are needed and not being granted permanently. Now, all of the things that can be found in the infrastructure as code, for example, or in the left side of the environment, in lower environments, can be also shown in the system. And you can easily find them and resolve them even before they get to production. Finally, we want you to remember that it's all about access, right? IAM is very important for that reason, and it's been very important for that reason traditionally. And in the cloud, it became all that more important. And because of how dynamic the cloud is and how complex it is, you have to control it all along the life cycle, and you have to be proactive about it. And finally, there's a lot of information that needs to be consumed and analyzed and presented in a very clear way. And this is, for example, what our technology does, and takes all this complexity and allows you to have full control over it, so you can reduce potential issues, and you can achieve least privilege within your environment, thus preventing or minimalizing the kind of fallout that can be from breaches on your most sensitive resources. So if you have any more questions, feel free to go on our website. We have a lot of content there, and you can also reach out to me whenever you want. Thank you so much.